Mary stood alone in the quiet ranch kitchen, her sleeves rolled up, her soft brown hair tied loosely behind her head. The morning sun filtered through the dusty window, casting golden light over the wooden table where dough rested beneath her fingertips. Ever since she had arrived at the ranch as an orphan girl seeking work, the kitchen had become her only refuge, her place of peace. She began to hum softly, almost unconsciously. It wasn't a song she had learned, it was something that had always lived inside her, gentle, pure, full of longing. The melody floated like a prayer through the sunlit air. Outside, boots crunched over gravel. Jacob Turner, the ranch owner, a quiet, towering cowboy known for his stern silence, was crossing the hallway toward the stables when he stopped. The sound reached him, delicate, soothing, unlike anything he had heard in years. He took one slow step toward the kitchen door, his breath caught in his chest. Mary still hadn't noticed him. With careful hands, she lifted the dough and placed it in a pan. Her humming softened into a whisper. A single strand of hair fell over her cheek, and she brushed it away with a flour-covered hand. There was innocence in her movement, a peace that stirred something deep in Jacob's heart, something he thought he had buried with his grief long ago. Just then, Mary finally felt his presence. She turned, and froze. Her eyes widened, breath stilling in her throat. Jacob stood there in the doorway, his hat in his hand, not speaking, only listening, as though the sound of her voice had stopped time itself. Mary's heart raced as she stood frozen by the stove, unsure if she had overstepped by humming. She lowered her gaze immediately, wiping her flour-streaked hands on her apron. I'm sorry, sir," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I didn't realize anyone was nearby. I'll be quiet." Jacob didn't speak right away. His rough hands tightened slightly around the hat in his grip. He was a man who rarely used words unless necessary, but something in this moment felt different, fragile, sacred. "You don't need to stop," he finally said, his voice low, deep, and gentle in a way Mary had never heard before. "That sound, it's the first peaceful thing this house has known in a long time." Mary blinked, stunned. No one had ever complimented her, not for her voice, not for anything. She swallowed, unsure how to respond. Jacob stepped into the room slowly, his boots echoing softly on the wooden floor. He glanced around the kitchen, the bread rising, the stew simmering, the table set with care. It smelled of warmth, comfort, home. Things this ranch hadn't known since his late wife passed 3 years ago. "You've done all this before sunrise?" he asked quietly. Mary nodded. "Yes, sir. I couldn't sleep." Jacob studied her face, tired eyes, but full of a quiet strength. There was something deeply familiar about her presence, as though the house itself came alive when she was inside it. "You don't have to call me, sir, all the time," he murmured. "Jacob is fine." Mary slowly lifted her gaze, just enough to meet his eyes. For a heartbeat, the silence between them was no longer empty. It felt like the beginning of something neither of them could yet name. Mary moved quietly through the house that afternoon, dusting shelves and tending the fire. Jacob had gone out to mend a broken fence post, but his words from the morning echoed in her mind. "That sound, it's the first peaceful thing this house has known in a long time." No one had ever spoken to her that way. She had always been the hired girl, the unwanted niece, the one who should be grateful for scraps. Yet Jacob's tone held something she had never heard directed at her before: respect. As she was sweeping near the back door, she suddenly heard a sharp cry. Mary hurried outside and saw Jacob kneeling near the fence, his hand pressed to his side. A loose beam had fallen, striking him across the ribs. Without hesitation, Mary rushed to him. "You're hurt," she cried, dropping to her knees. Jacob tried to wave it off. "It's nothing. Just a bruise." But Mary had seen enough pain in her life to recognize when someone was hiding it. Her hands, gentle yet firm, supported him as she helped him to his feet. Jacob didn't protest this time. Inside the house, he sat in the wooden chair near the hearth while Mary fetched a cloth soaked in warm water. As she pressed the cloth to his side, Jacob watched her. Her brows knitted in concentration, lips pressed together in worry. She was so used to taking care of others, yet it was clear no one had ever truly taken care of her. "You shouldn't be doing this," Jacob said softly. Mary paused, eyes fixed on her hands. "If I don't help, who will?" In that moment, Jacob understood. This woman wasn't weak. She had carried a lifetime of burdens, and still chose kindness. That evening, the sky deepened into shades of rose and lavender, casting soft light into the quiet kitchen. Jacob had insisted that he was well enough to finish his chores, but Mary had firmly refused to let him lift a finger, much to his silent amusement. As the stew simmered on the fire, Mary hummed again. But this time, Jacob listened. He stood in the doorway, arms crossed loosely, watching her. The melody wasn't one he recognized. It wasn't a church hymn or a folk song. It was something else, something hers. "You always hum when you cook?" Jacob finally asked. Mary startled, nearly dropping the ladle. Her cheeks warmed. Only when I feel safe." The words slipped out before she could stop them. She froze, mortified. Safe. Was she admitting too much? Would he mock her, as others had? Jacob stepped forward, slowly, as though approaching a wild bird that might fly at any sudden movement. "Then keep humming," he said quietly. "This house needs it." Mary turned away, but her eyes shone with unshed tears. She wasn't crying from sorrow, but from a strange, unfamiliar feeling that frightened her even more than pain. Hope. Jacob, sensing the delicate air between them, pulled out a chair at the table. "Sit. You've been on your feet all day." Mary hesitated before obeying. No man had ever asked her to sit while he remained standing. For a moment, they were silent. The only sounds were the bubbling stew and the soft crackling of the fire. But in that silence, something powerful formed, a promise without words. Jacob looked at her with new eyes. Not as a cook, not as help, but as a woman whose song could change a life. The next morning, the ranch was bathed in the soft golden light of dawn. Mary moved quietly around the kitchen, preparing breakfast as she had done every day since she arrived. But today felt different. There was a lightness in her steps she hadn't felt in years, a quiet hope that hummed as naturally as her morning song. Jacob appeared in the doorway, brushing dust from his coat. He paused when he saw her, the sunlight catching the strands of her hair, making them glow like threads of gold. For a long moment, he simply watched her work, noticing the grace in her movements, the care in every task she performed. "You're up early," he said softly, his voice carrying more warmth than usual. Mary glanced at him and smiled faintly. "I couldn't sleep, and I wanted to make sure breakfast was ready." Jacob walked closer, leaning against the doorframe. "Mary, I've seen a lot in my years on this ranch, but I've never seen someone bring so much life to a place that's been so quiet for so long." Her cheeks flushed. She had never expected praise, never attention beyond the work she performed. But hearing it from Jacob, it made her heart lift. I just do my best," she whispered, looking down. Jacob stepped forward, gently tilting her chin so her eyes met his. "Your best is more than enough. You've brought warmth, laughter, and hope back into this house. I can't imagine it without you." Mary's breath caught. In that moment, the fear, doubt, and loneliness that had shadowed her life melted away. She realized that the hum she had sung yesterday, and every day before, had done more than fill the kitchen with music. It had opened a door to a life she never thought she could have. Jacob extended his hand. "Mary, will you stay? Not just as help, but with me." Tears of joy sprang to her eyes. She took his hand, her voice steady, full of hope. "Yes, I'll stay." And in the soft golden light of the summer sunrise, the orphan girl who had once only hummed to herself found a home, a friend, and the gentle beginnings of love she had never imagined possible.